And I think it's really important to say to people that it's all right to change. It's all right to move around, try different things, see what you enjoy. And it's not necessarily always about climbing that ladder. It's about finding where you want to be.
Hello there, I'm Sarah McCluskey, and this is Research Adjacent. Each episode, I talk to amazing research adjacent professionals about what they do and why it makes a difference. Keep listening to find out why we think the research adjacent space is where the real magic happens. Sometimes what I love most about doing this podcast is the excuse to check in with old colleagues and see what they're up to now. This episode is a classic example. My guest is Vicki Aldmington, a careers consultant at the University of Reading. Vicki and I worked together about 10 years ago at the Royal Society of Chemistry, where, despite our accents, Vicki was the regional manager for South East England, while I covered the north of England. During those 10 years, Vicki has been on a journey to find a role that feels like a really good fit, something I think a lot of us can relate to. It's clear that she now feels she has found a role that gives her job satisfaction and room to grow, while her wiggly path gives her lots of experience to draw on when supporting students. Listen on to hear Vicki's story. Vicki, thanks so much for coming along to be on the podcast today.
No problem. Nice to see you.
I wonder if we could start by inviting you to tell us a bit about what it is that you do.
Sure. So I'm a careers consultant at the University of Reading. I work within our Institute of Education and our School of Chemistry, Food and Pharmacy to support our students to help them explore what careers they might be interested in doing, help embed some employability within the curriculum, and then help people to find and secure work experience and jobs, hopefully after they leave Reading. I do it in lots of different ways. As I say, I do it in the curriculum, I do it through one-to-one appointments, central sessions, and I also run our alumni support programme where we offer career support to people after they leave Reading. So we're quite a big team of careers consultants, all supporting in different expertise areas, but with also different sort of disciplines, specialisms too. But I sit within our main sciences of chemistry, food and pharmacy. Someone else covers biology, and I also do education.
Yeah, excellent. Lots of things going on. Is there any particular parts of the job that you really, really enjoy?
That's quite a tricky question, because my gut says it's the working with people, it's the one-to-one appointments and the sessions where I'm working with students. I know you talk quite a lot of postgrads, understandably, in your podcast, but the postgrads are really actively engaged with their career development. They're really thinking about it, and I did a session with lots of postgrads not that long ago, and again I really enjoy working with them because they're so engaged. But it's also really fun just to look at the programmes, understand what's going on with the programmes, working with the academics, to see what else we can be doing or doing differently. It keeps me linked to the core content without necessarily delivering that core content.
Yeah. Oh, I think that's a little bit of a hint there to your past life before you came into this world of careers. And we've known each other for a long time. We used to work together. And that certainly, careers was not what you were doing then. Well, in a kind of roundabout way, but I wonder if maybe you could tell us a bit about your journey to get to where you are today.
I'm really not sure we've got the time for the whole story. In all seriousness, so my background, so I'm a biologist. That's what I did my undergrad in. I did a PhD in biochemistry, and I probably followed that path because I loved science. I don't think I ever really thought about what it meant to be a scientist, despite doing a placement year, despite working in a lab for a year. Ultimately, I knew I didn't really want to work in a commercial lab, but I still had no clue. I knew I didn't want to be a teacher. I come from a family of teachers, and for various reasons decided that wasn't for me. But I worked, after my PhD, I worked in education and outreach within the learning society sector, and initially in microbiology. And then when you and I worked together, Sarah, obviously that was back in the days at the Royal Society of Chemistry. I love being in those environments. I loved working with people that really champion the profession, that were really keen to sort of promote. A big part of it is like embedding. Ultimately, that's kind of what we were doing back then, back in the day. But then I had children, And much as I never wanted to be that mum who changed her life or her professional life to fit around kids, when I was a regional manager, as we both were then, I travelled an awful lot, and I just decided it wasn't for me. And a job came up at Reading. An old friend was doing it. It's all about connections, isn't it? But an old friend from an old job was doing that job and said, actually, why don't you come and do it? You'll be able to do it and it'll fit in with the family. And I did. So that was managing a network. It was a research network. So I was going back towards research then, managing collaborations between businesses and universities actually across the country. It was an externally facing network. That was okay, but I felt like I was stuck in an office on my own and didn't get that sort of people focus that we've kind of talked about and what I get in my current job. Then this is what I mean, it's a sort of long story, and then I sort of jumped into knowledge exchange. And again, you've had some great speakers on your podcast, great and guests talking about their experience in knowledge exchange. And I did that for a few years, working with a really fantastic team here at Reading. And again, it was that promotion of university research, bringing it into the real world, commercialising it, getting funding. But there was still an element missing, and don't tell my mum, don't tell my family, but I think it was the teaching. It was that. I think it's in my bones. I bumped into now a colleague at a women's development course that I was on at Reading, and she mentioned that she worked in careers, and I thought, hang on a minute, I quite fancy that. Having always accessed career support as an undergraduate and a postgraduate, I kind of knew what they did, but I never really thought I could do it. I was always asking them for help with my CV or all the boring functional bits, I suppose. And thought, actually, I fancy a punt at that. And I was fortunate, and the team thought that I would be worth a try too. So I've been doing that since January last year. And it's been a bit of a roundabout and circuitous sort of way to get into careers, I think. But I'm probably feeling as settled now as I was back when I worked with you at RSC, which I haven't felt like that for a while. And it definitely feels much more me, more comfortable, but challenging in all the right ways. And really pleased that I'm going to be doing some postgraduate training. So you have to qualify to postgraduate in careers. And I'm really pleased that Reading are going to be helping me to do that. And I start that later this year, which is exciting.
I'm sure this is something you've thought about, but is there anything that you feel is a bit of a thread that runs through the roles that you've done, a particular skill that you've used, or an area of interest?
That's something that I think about a lot, actually. I talk to students a lot about career values, and I talk to them about their strengths. And there's all sorts of different assessments and tools and all that stuff that you could do online. You remember the quizzes probably from high school. And for me, it's supporting others. Mm-hmm. I think it's supporting others to, it sounds a bit cheesy, but to be the best that they can be. And it's also about collaboration, and it's working with other people and bringing in different skill sets, bringing people together. I think that's probably what I would see through everything that I've done, possibly with the exception of the PhD. But
I think also the fact that you've done so many things, I imagine that gives you lots of experience that you can draw on for the careers conversations that you're having now.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I do draw on personal experience. It becomes a bit difficult when you realise how much older you are than some of those students that you work with. But it's, it's relatable. It's relatable experience. It's, I can talk to them about my placement and what I learned and how to reflect. I think reflection is such an important skill. Dare I say that many scientists don't really sit and think about their own development skills within that. So I think reflection is really important. That sort of ability to think about what you're doing and how it relates to your own experiences is really helpful when speaking to students, but also being able to invite them to do it. Ultimately, my job as a careers consultant is about coaching and really getting people to get to their own answers. It's not about me, not really. It's, not at all. It's about helping them help themselves, I suppose.
Yeah. Oh, it sounds like you've found a place where you can draw together all that experience and your personal skills in a way that feels really useful.
Yeah, definitely. I think just coming back to that sort of lots of different fragments thing, often at this time of year, so our undergraduates, some of our postgraduates coming to the end of their qualifications, they'll book in appointments with us and they'll say they want to talk about what they want to do next or careers with my degree. There's a slight uncertainty about those conversations for me going into them. Again, I think that comes to my own inexperience at the moment, but I find them really interesting conversations because these students have often not done what you would maybe classify as a sort of vocational qualification, your teachers, your doctors, your dentists type things. And they have no clue really about where they want to go with it. And it can be really, everything can feel really big. And sometimes it's about compartmentalizing what those, what the potential is, and then try to pick out a bit more of an understanding about what they could do. And I think that comes from our parents who maybe had one job, one career. Both of my parents, they went into a career, they did it until retirement, moving around a little bit, but essentially that's what they did. And I think it's really important to say to people that it's all right to change. It's all right to move around, try different things, see what you enjoy. And it's not necessarily always about climbing that ladder. You and I had a bit of a catch up about that, didn't we?
Yeah.
It's not about climbing the ladder. It's about finding where you want to be, use your strengths and your values.
And I think so many of the jobs that exist now, the opportunities that there are, didn't exist when people were younger, so you sort of say, what do you want to do when you grow up? And there's the big obvious things, but the career path I've taken, so many of the jobs I've done didn't even exist 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And so you've got to be willing to kind of make it up a little bit as you go along.
I remember a careers advisor saying that to me in high school. The job that you do now might not exist, and the job that you go into might not exist in 10 years. Yeah. And I just thought, what a bonkers concept.
Yeah.
But it's so true. It's so true.
Yeah. Oh, wise advice, definitely. So in the wiggly path that you've taken through your career, or perhaps thinking about coming into the job that you're in now, have there been any things that you found particularly challenging, stumbling blocks along the way?
I think for coming into this, it felt like quite a big step to me. Moving away from research, moving away from science, I was quite scared about. I don't work with any scientists in my immediate team. Obviously, I still work with the schools. But to me, moving away from science was really scary. The conversations that I used to have while I worked in knowledge exchange, the team, we were all chemists or biologists by training, or at least most of us were. And I think the moving away from that, felt like a much bigger barrier than it actually was. The people that I work with now are primarily from an arts background, but their approaches are different, and that's a good thing, and that gives a richness to what we offer as a service. And I think that my reservations were quite unfounded. I don't think, I still have that science conversation just on my lunchtime walks if I want them with my old colleagues. And equally, everyone's got different interests and perspectives. I don't think I had ever, most of my friends are scientists. It just happens that that's what has happened, the path that I've taken. So that to me was an initial challenge, but it wasn't anything to worry about.
It's interesting. I had a similar experience when I went to work with medical humanities after having spent most of my career up to that point working very much in STEM subjects. And for a long time felt like a real fish out of water, but then realised that, research is research at the end of the day. And I kind of understood the big picture, even if I didn't know the obscure French philosopher that somebody was referring to, and that was
absolutely,
okay.
Absolutely. And it's about skills. I look at my team and I look at what they're good at and what their strengths are. And it is comparable to what mine are. It's just using them in slightly different ways or with different subject matter. So it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. Thinking then on to perhaps some of the things you've done throughout your career that you're really proud of. I wonder if you've got a couple of things you'd like to tell us about there.
I think the biggest project that I've been involved with, I think you were still at RSC when I was involved with this, and it was a big project that we did in London with some funding that we had from the Mayor of London it was called the London Schools Excellence Fund, and a big project in London to engage more students and teachers with the chemistry training and resources that RSC offered. And I was given that as a little bit of I guess like a project taster. It was a big project to manage. I had never done anything like that before. It was messy, as these projects often are. It was much larger budget than I had been involved with. And we brought in another member of staff to work with. And actually, she and I worked really closely together and did lots of really exciting things in London, which was great, because although previously I had supported London, we just didn't have the resource. We didn't have the capacity to make a dent in what we needed to do. So I guess that to me is probably the biggest project that I've done. And I was really proud of what we achieved there. It was really nice to be involved with something that was so big, I guess.
Yes.
But to be totally honest with you, think back, you asked me earlier about the sort of things that I enjoy in the job and what the thread is that's running through. Sometimes it's just the one-to-one appointments. For me, sometimes it's just the one-to-one conversations with a student who, hasn't got a clue or what they want to do, or, doesn't think they'll get onto that master's or PhD, or needs some coaching through an interview, or it's those. I worked with a student earlier this year who was a mature student, had quite a big career change, and had come back to university to do a different qualification, and working with them to build their confidence. Incidentally, also a mum, building their confidence and doing something quite different, and they essentially got their dream job. And being involved with that at each step was so nice. And so actually it could be my next one-to-one appointment is the thing that I'm most proud of. So it can be anything.
That satisfaction of feeling you're making a difference, I think that's it, isn't it? And being there to watch somebody's journey can be a real privilege, can't it?
Definitely. You don't necessarily get that from the big research projects. Again, thinking about those sorts of things that being involved with from a knowledge exchange perspective, you help them get the funding in, you maybe help them secure the funding, but very rare is it that you manage to be all the way through the process. So maybe it's about my attention span, I don't know, but I certainly get quick reward from more of these sessions. There's a balance, isn't there? You always have longer projects, but the quick reward is also quite satisfying.
I think it's one of the things that's so hard to quantify, though, as well, isn't it? Because so much of the way we're encouraged to present what we do out in the world is with the numbers and the metrics and things like that. But then what actually sticks with us, I think, is the human stories and the people and the journeys along the way, rather than a particular, number that we've achieved, output. Yeah,
definitely. We're always desperate to measure these things, aren't we?
I know. I don't know quite where it comes from. So it sounds like you're still getting to grips with this world that you're working in now, the careers world. But I wonder if, maybe thinking about that, or maybe thinking a bigger picture, if you had a magic wand and you could change something about either the world you work in now or the worlds that you've previously worked in, what would you do?
I've thought about this a lot, and I've been trying to think of the one thing, and I think it's all about equity and equality for me. I've got a list of 4 things, if I'm totally honest with you, but they all fit into one big picture.
Okay.
And it's all about supporting people to be more career curious at an earlier stage, getting them to explore work experience opportunities in all of their different shapes and forms, but so that they're accessible to all. So that might be the carers, it might be the people with additional needs, it might be people with different accents or different social backgrounds, but giving them access to opportunities that will allow them to help start to shape and question what it is that they could do next. Throughout my, as you said, wiggly career, I've been really fortunate in that I've been able to test some of these ideas from networking, from being confident enough to go out and ask to do things, to shadow people, to get more experience. That's my personality, but it doesn't work for everyone. But I've also had the support of my partner, my husband, where he could bring in the money, where I had that sort of flexibility to try different things. So I guess for me, it's all about allowing all people those opportunities to find what it is that's right for them. And I in my experience, it's trial and error. So getting people to try those things.
Yeah, I love that. I love the idea of being career curious. That sounds, just nice and playful and exploratory. But you're absolutely right that some people need, it's fine to have the placement, but if they don't have the childcare, or if they can't afford the travel costs to get there, it could be anything. It might as well be, going to the moon or something. It might not be something that they feel that they can do. So giving people the support and the framework to help them to do that. Yeah. And as you say as well, so much is who you know, not what you know, isn't it? Yeah.
We also don't think about careers early enough. Say I went to university and studied biology. I don't think at any point in my degree I really thought about what that job would look like. And we're, as I say, that's something that we're really pushing at Reading, is to embed sort of careers within the programme and employability skills within the programmes, so that those people who wouldn't access it through extracurricular, they still get access to these things within the programme. So I think getting students to think about it earlier is going to be a good thing. There will always be the ones who come at this time, just after exams are finished. What can I do?
What am I going to do now?
But hopefully giving them little nudges in directions of internships or experiences is helping.
Yes, I think so. Yeah, fantastic. Well, I think we should think about wrapping up our conversation. Vicki, thank you so much for taking the time to come along and have a chat. If people want to find you, where's the best place to track you down?
Oh, people can look me up on LinkedIn. That's not a problem. Yeah.
Great. I will get a link as well and put that in the show notes. Thank you so much. It's been lovely to catch up with you and to hear about your career journey.
Thank you very much. It's really nice to see you.
Thanks for listening to Research Adjacent. If you're listening in a podcast app, please check you're subscribed and then use the links under the episode to find full show notes and to follow the podcast on LinkedIn, Twitter or Instagram. Also, make sure that you're subscribed to the Research Adjacent Roundup newsletter. You can also find all the links and other episodes at www.researchadjacent.com. Research Adjacent is presented and produced by Sarah McCluskey, and you, yes you, get a big gold star for listening right to the end. See you next time.